Welcome to another lecture by MedicoMedics, Anatomy Chapter 7, the Nervous System. So in this lecture, we will briefly describe the functions and the organization of the nervous system, present concepts like neurons, synapses, and neurotransmitters. We will talk about the brain, the spinal cord, differentiate between the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system, look at some neurological disorders, some common diagnostic tools, and end with a summary. Now, what are some functions of the nervous system? First of all, we have sensory input, where we detect stimuli through our sensory receptors. There is integration, so processes and the interpretation of this sensory input. Then we have motor output. So it activates effector organs like muscles and glands for a response. Another function is homeostasis, so it regulates the internal environment. And number 5, mental activities, so it supports memory, emotions, and reasoning, etc. Here is a little picture. You can orientate yourself. We have the parietal lobe, we have the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe. We have the occipital lobe at the back, we have the cerebellum right underneath, and the spinal cord. So what is the organization of the nervous system? Now, two very important concepts that you need to clearly identify at the get-go is the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So, briefly, everything that is not the central nervous system falls under the peripheral nervous system. Now, in the CNS, or the central nervous system, we find the brain and the spinal cord. And here, information is integrated and processed. While the peripheral nervous system is where we find the cranial and spinal nerves. The peripheral nervous system is further divided into sensory afferent divisions which carries information to the central nervous system, and into a motor division or efferent part that carries information from the nervous system or the central nervous system to its effectors. So the peripheral nervous system carries information to the central nervous system, where it gets processed and integrated. And then when a command is ready, it sends it back via the peripheral nervous system through the efferent motor system to wherever it's supposed to go to do some function. Another concept is the autonomic nervous system. This is where we find the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic. Some other concepts include neurons and neuroglia. So neurons are the functional units of the nervous system. What is its structure? Well, it has a cell body, or also called soma. This contains the nucleus. You will find dendrites. These receive signals. And you will find axons. These transmit signals. What types of neurons are there? We have sensory, we have motor, we have interneurons, etc. And what is neuroglia or glial cells? These support cells for neurons. Examples include astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, Schwann cells, microglia, etc. Now, you don't need to memorize this right now at all, just to give you an idea of the different subsections and parts of the nervous system. Now, we also have synapses and neurotransmitters. So a synapse is the junction where a neuron communicates with another neuron or its effector cell. Types include electrical, where there is a direct flow of ions. Another one is chemical, where there is a release of neurotransmitters. Common neurotransmitters include acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA. So here you can see the synapse. And this part right here, between the two, is called a synaptic cleft. So we have the presynaptic neuron, and then we will have the postsynaptic neuron. Now, this synapse include or contains vesicles that contain neurotransmitters, for example. And due to some reasons, they leave the cell or they leave the synapse, enter into the synaptic cleft to then connect with some receptor at the postsynaptic neuron to then get picked up and cause some action. Now let's go back a bit to the brain. So the brain has the cerebrum, which is the largest part of the brain responsible for voluntary activities, sensory perception, and thought. The cerebrum is divided into lobes. So we have the frontal lobe. Important here is reasoning, the ability for reasoning, movement, and emotions. We have the parietal lobe. Here we find sensation, spatial orientation. We have the temporal lobes, where we have hearing and memory. We have the occipital lobe, where we have vision. So, in this illustration here, we have the frontal lobe here. This is where we find the important areas involved in movements, emotions, reasoning. We have the parietal lobe up here, important in sensation and spatial orientation. We have the temporal lobes here on the sides, important in hearing and memory. And at the back, you will find the occipital lobe, important in vision. Now, that's the cerebrum. Now we have the cerebellum right here, this part. Now, the cerebellum is crucial for coordinating movement and balance. Another thing we have is the brainstem. This controls the basic life functions we have, like breathing and our heartbeat. And includes the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. Now, we also have, of course, the spinal cord. This extends from the brainstem all the way down to the lumbar region. Its function, it conducts signals between the brain and the body. It's also our reflex center. It is very carefully protected by our vertebrae, meninges, and the cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. Now, we mentioned the difference between the central nervous system and then we had the peripheral nervous system. Important structures here include the cranial nerves, where we find 12 pairs responsible for head and neck functions. We also find the spinal nerves, 31 pairs connecting the spinal cord to the body. And we have the autonomic nervous system. So we have the subparts of sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic. Now, the sympathetic nervous system prepares our body for stress. It's connected to activity increase, while the parasympathetic promotes rest and energy conservation, which means it's associated with decreased energy or activity. Now, let's briefly mention some neurological disorders. So we can have a stroke, where there is a disruption of blood supply to the brain. We can have Parkinson's disease, where there is a degeneration of dopamine-producing neurons. We can have multiple sclerosis, MS, where there is an autoimmune attack on the myelin sheath. We can have epilepsy, where there is abnormal electrical activity in the brain. We can have peripheral neuropathy, so damage to the peripheral nerves. Now, to just give you some clinical relevance here, first of all, what are myelin sheath? So if you remember from the previous slides, we had the structure of nerves, right? We had the cell body, which contains the nucleus and manages the cell's activities. This thing here was called a soma. We have these things, finger-like structures, from this cell body called dendrites. These are the dendrites. And these receive signals from other neurons. So other neurons, their terminals, signals are coming here to this one, and then it carries forward. Now, another structure connected to the cell body is the axon, right? The axon is a long, thin projection that carries electrical signals, so messages, away from the cell body to other neurons, muscles or glands or whatever. And we arrive at then, we also have the axon terminal, right? So this signal is supposed to go here on this axon. Now, what is interesting in MS here is then that this axon is covered with this protective layer called myelin sheath. So it wraps around the axons. It's important for efficient signal transduction and, of course, the protection of the axon. Now, what happens in a disease like MS is that, so multiple sclerosis is a chronic autoimmune disease. So autoimmune means our body, for whatever reason, is attacking itself. Our own immune system is malfunctioning. It's not working normally, because normally it's supposed to attack things that are coming into our body that's not supposed to be there. But with the development of an autoimmune disease, your body, for whatever reason, starts to attack itself. So what it does is, in the case of MS, is that the immune system mistakenly is attacking this myelin sheath. And over time, with the destruction of the myelin sheath, the axon becomes more exposed. This process is called demyelination. So the name is myelin sheath. The process of this breakdown is called demyelination. So without this myelin, electrical signals that should travel around, along this axon either slow down or become blocked. Furthermore, your body will naturally try to repair these damages, but the problem is it is often incomplete. So it produces lesions instead, or scar tissue. This scar tissue is what is sclerosis, or plaques, and this is developed in these damaged areas. And so eventually, if this axon is indeed damaged or destroyed, it becomes dysfunctional. So do you think that signals coming here can then travel through? No. Now imagine this happening a lot in some specific area of the body. What would happen to the muscles, let's say, that need these nerve impulses? Well, they would stop working. Imagine it's your eyes. If they don't get these signals anymore, you can't see anymore, etc. And there are a lot of symptoms that would develop in, for example, MS, like muscle weakness, as we mentioned, numbness, issues with your vision, issues with coordination, etc. The symptoms will vary indeed, depending on the location and, of course, the extent of the damage. Now, that's not something you need to remember right now, because you will study these different pathologies a lot as you move along in your medical studies, but it's just to give you a direct clinical correlation with what you're studying right here at this level. You are learning the basic anatomy of the nervous system. So you learn about cell bodies, axons, and terminals. Then you learn that there is something protecting this axon, important in facilitating signal transduction. And if it's damaged, then we reach pathophysiology and the development of different disorders. And this is what I encourage you to always try and do as you study, is to connect the basics with whatever is practically relevant. And then going back and forth, you will continuously expand your understanding of medicine. It is also a philosophy that we try to implement in MedicoMedics. Now, just briefly, some diagnostic tools. So we can do an EEG to measure the brain activity. We can do an MRI, a magnetic resonance imaging, to visualize the brain and the spinal cord. We can do a lumbar puncture to analyze cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF. We do nerve conduction studies to evaluate peripheral nerve function. So in summary then, the nervous system is responsible for sensory input, integration, and motor output. It is divided into the CNS, containing the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, the nerves and the ganglia, and our autonomic nervous system, where we find the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. We have neurons and neurotransmitters that enable communication and coordination. And understanding neurological disorders and diagnostics is obviously crucial for clinical practice. That's the end of Chapter 7. Continue now to Chapter 8.